The Sims franchise is iconic for so many reasons, but today I want to take a look at how Sims personalities have evolved, and maybe devolved, throughout the past 25 years. Before we get started, just a reminder to please like this video and to subscribe because it really helps out my channel. Also, a small disclaimer, but I will not be discussing in-depth pets in this video because that would have too much for me to cover, but with that being said, let's begin. The Sims, or as some like to call it, The Sims 1, released on February 4th in the year 2000. It was such a success that it became the best-selling computer game of that year with over 1.77 million copies sold in the US. It was like no other game on the market. Not only could you build and decorate a house, but you could control these tiny pixel people too. I know for many, myself included, it was the first quote-unquote grown-up computer game that I got to play as a kid, and all of its cool features both excited and overwhelmed me. But today's video is focusing on one main thing, and that is Sims personalities. The system for creating a Sims personality was quite simple in the first Sims game. It was categorized into 5 different types of personality traits, those being neat, outgoing, active, playful, and nice. In order to choose the level for each category for a Sim, the player is given 25 of what are called personality points. Each category has a system of 0 to 10 points, and the player must split up their given 25 points to assign a level to each category. This does affect how the Sim reacts to certain things in live mode. For example, if you, the player, assign a Sim with low enough points for the neatness category, the Sim will not autonomously wash their hands after using the restroom, and they won't make the bed after they wake up. Therefore, a part of their personality is being untidy or a slob. Same goes for the other categories. Also, a nice little touch that was added, though it didn't affect much, was that Sims were automatically assigned a zodiac sign based on their traits that the player gave them. Overall, I would say this was a quite simple but somewhat effective system to create Sim personalities, especially for the decade that this game was created in. The Sims 2, the same system that The Sims 1 offered, was basically applied to creating Sim personalities in the second iteration as well, except it went a step further. What I love about The Sims 2 and how they slightly changed how personalities work in live mode was the new interactions that they added. Depending on the trait, some Sims could only use a specific interaction if they have a certain trait. For example, if a Sim is a slob, they get the option to lick clean empty plates after they themselves or someone else finishes eating, and it also boosts their hunger mood a bit to make them less hungry. One thing that really differs moving from the first Sims to the Sims 2 was how they labeled the traits when assigning them in Create a Sim. Instead of all of them just being labeled neat, outgoing, etc., it would instead list the spectrum from one end to the other for each category. So from sloppy to neat, from grouchy to nice, from lazy to active, and so on. I prefer this as it was just visually more helpful to understand how your Sim's personality would be affected, especially for my 12-year-old self who was playing it. The amount of detail that went into The Sims 2 is nothing short of amazing, and I'm sure many of you will agree. The Sims 3 is where things really take a new turn. In my opinion, mostly for the better. The original personality system that was previously used in The Sims 1 and 2 is now basically scrapped. In comes a new way to create unique Sims with personality traits. Traits were no longer a point system, but instead were more specified individual pieces to a Sim's personality. Not all Sims had the same type of traits either, allowing players to create unique combos for their Sim personalities. The Sims 3 base game came with 63 unique traits. These 63 included natural cook, childish, mean-spirited, lucky, and absent-minded, just to name a few. The number of personality traits allowed for a Sim depends on their life stage. If a Sim is a newborn, they can have up to 2 new traits, and depending on if the pregnancy goes smooth or not, determines if the player gets to choose their traits or if the game randomizes those traits at birth. Toddlers also only have 2, so when they age up from a newborn to a toddler, they do not gain any additional traits. Once a sim ages from a toddler to a child, they are then given one new trait slot. Being allowed to choose the trait or not is determined by whether the toddler gained enough skills during their life stage. Once a child ages into a teen, they are again allowed one new trait slot, giving them 4 traits total. This time, being allowed to choose their new trait or not is determined by how well they do in school. So if they get below a certain grade, you can forget about choosing a trait. The same rules apply that if the teen did well in school, you get to choose their trait. The last and final trait slot given is when Sims reach the young adult life stage, allowing 5 traits total. You can also create Sims in these said life stages and create a Sim instead, and they will be allowed their respective number of trait slots that I previously mentioned, minus newborns of course, as those cannot be made in Create a Sim. But wait! There's more! Seriously, this may be the longest segment of the video, so my apologies. Not only did the base game come with 63 traits, but each expansion and one stuff pack added in more traits for the player to choose from. I won't go over them all, but a pack that added in a few new traits was the University Life expansion. It came with 3 new traits for players to choose from, the traits being avant-garde, irresistible, and socially awkward. With the University Life expansion, Sims are also able to gain up to 2 more trait slots as opposed to typical 5. One way is to be a part of one of the 3 social groups that come with the expansion. Once a Sim reaches level 8 of a social group, they are then prompted to choose an extra trait. Sims can also gain another trait slot once they complete a university degree, increasing the total number of possible traits that young adult or older Sims can have from 5 to 7. But it really doesn't stop there because there's also the Lifetime Aspiration Rewards panel. Sims who are a child or older can complete what's called wants. When Sims complete a want, they rack up lifetime aspiration points. These points can then be exchanged for a large number of different perks through the Lifetime Rewards panel. One of these perks being extra traits. The list really feels endless here. The Sims team, they really went all out on this one. Some of the traits that the Sims can purchase with their points are Speedy Cleaner. It basically does what it says. Sims who have this trait will clean up messes faster than others. And one of my favorites is the Super Green Thumb, which is great for gardeners because it allows Sims who are teens and up to grow better quality plants. These are literally only 2 of the dozens of other trait rewards you can choose from, and depending on if the player has expansions as well, then there will be even more reward traits to choose. Now that we've discussed the way traits were implemented into The Sims 3, what exactly do they do, and what makes them different from The Sims 1 and 2? Well, besides that they have individual names, they also offer a list of unique specialized benefits or downfalls for the Sim, depending on the traits that they have. For example, let's say a Sim has the natural cook trait. What exactly does that do for the Sim? It allows them multiple things. 1. Sims with this trait gain cooking skill faster than those who do not have it. 2. Sims will make higher quality food with it. 3. Sims never burn food or cause a fire while cooking with the natural cook trait. And lastly, Sims with this trait will prefer to watch the cooking channel on TV, and that's the channel they will automatically turn on if you choose the watch TV action for them. But like I mentioned, not all traits offer benefits, and they can be a detriment to the Sim and those around them, which of course can be a bit of fun and chaos. I will choose the absent-minded trait, for example. Not only does this trait come with a lot of disadvantages, but it has a longer list of trait quirks than the previous trait example I gave. I'll just go over a couple to get a feel for how the trait works, but sometimes Sims with the absent-minded trait will find themselves standing in a room and wonder, how the heck did I get here? Anyone else ever walk into a room and forget why they went in there? Yeah, I feel this all too well. Anyway, Sims will sometimes be forgetful, causing them to literally cancel out a command that they have in their queue because they forgot what they were about to do, which I find hilarious. Sims with this trait also tend to find themselves in dangerous situations more often than others because of their forgetful nature. For example, Sims may leave food that they are in the middle of cooking on the stove unattended because they forgot they were cooking, thus the potential for starting a house fire. If your Sim is absent-minded, let's just say it's best to have a fire extinguisher in hand at all times. Just a side note, but some traits do actually clash with others, meaning if a Sim is brave, then they can't have the coward trait because those two directly contradict one another. One thing that I didn't mention, but it will be important later in this video, is that there are also what's called moodlets that are created by a Sim's actions and experiences. For the most part, they only affect your Sim's mood meter, but not their personality. The mood meter is where you see what emotion your Sim is currently feeling based off of the moodlets that they have and how high or low their needs are. In The Sims 3, the emotions that Sims can feel via the mood meter range all the way from depressed to elated. A Sim's mood in The Sims 3 only tends to affect their want to do certain tasks and their job performance, and it may add small idle animations, such as randomly crying if they're in a really sad or bad mood. But it doesn't affect how they act in terms of personality. In total, with all packs included, The Sims 3 offers 99 unique personality traits for players to choose from in Create a Sim. This huge list allows players to create some really cool and unique Sims and stories, which I find added a whole new amazing layer to gameplay for The Sims. Lastly, we have the current running title, The Sims 4. The Sims 4 had, let's say, a rocky start, to say the least, with an unfinished base game that left many players of the previous iterations mostly disappointed and confused. The trait system from The Sims 3 technically did carry over to The Sims 4, though some changes were made. Instead of 5 trait slots for young adult and older Sims, there are now only 3 trait slots, and Sims also receive a bonus trait based on their current life aspiration. Players do not get to choose this bonus trait, by the way. It also remains similar to The Sims 3 in that Sims in life stages younger than young adult have less trait slots available to them. Children are only allowed 1 trait, and teens are allowed 2. Sims 4 offers less base game traits as opposed to The Sims 3, with only 54 traits total. That number was actually less when it first released due to the fact that some traits were added into base game through future updates and events, plus some traits are age-specific. There is a total of 8 toddler-specific traits, and there are 6 specifically for infants. Toddlers were not added into The Sims 4 base game until 2 years after its initial release as well, which caused a much understandable outrage amongst players, but let's not get into that. Infants weren't added into The Sims 4 until the long-awaited update that added them into the base game on March 14th of 2023. Thus, infant traits didn't exist until 2023, meaning the number of base game traits was even less before they arrived. Of course, with the ridiculously large number of DLC that The Sims 4 offers, packs add in new traits for players to choose from as well. Sims 4 expansions typically add in somewhere between 2 to 4 new traits. Game packs sometimes add in 1 or 2, though they haven't released a new game pack since June of 2022 when they released the Werewolves game pack. As I mentioned before, Sims typically get what is called a bonus trait based off of the aspiration that they currently have. The base game offers a few, such as career-minded, which is basically an advantage for Sims to gain work experience faster than the average Sim, leading them to more frequent job promotions. Teens also receive a bonus trait based off of their current aspirations. Another thing that carried over from The Sims 3 to 4 is reward traits. These are obtained in a similar way to lifetime rewards, except now they are called satisfaction points. Sims can gain satisfaction points when they complete what are called whims that Sims have pop up above their head on the UI panel near their portrait. Though personally, I never really use whims. Sims can also gain more satisfaction points by completing goals that are a part of their aspiration. Some reward traits that the base game offers are Speed Cleaner, similar to what The Sims 3 Speedy Cleaner offers, Gym Rat, and Night Owl. Traits in The Sims 4 function similarly to traits in The Sims 3. Some Sims 4 traits have more perks or benefits than others, though some have as little as only 1, such as the Cheerful trait. Sims with the cheerful trait basically just become happy more often than others. And this leads to what inspired me to make this video in the first place. While moodlets were introduced first in The Sims 3 and they do make a return in The Sims 4, there is still this huge difference that comes into play when you compare how the systems for both games function. The Sims 4 decided to go an entirely new route. Besides the previous trait system, emotions were then added as an entirely new base game feature, and the mood meter, which was originally introduced in The Sims 2 and carried over to 3, was scrapped. This entirely new system has many disadvantages for both the Sims and the player. Emotions in The Sims 4, though at first thought may sound like a cool new realistic feature, what they actually do is quickly become too overpowering, and the main reason is because they are solely tied to moodlets. Since emotions stayed but the mood meter was removed, Sims moods tend to override many of their actions that would typically be trait-based. In The Sims 4, cheerful Sims who become angry can quickly turn into a completely different Sim. Even if they are a cheerful Sim, if the angry moodlet that they have is strong enough, it completely overrides every other moodlet that they have. Then the Sim will tend to have more angry or rude interactions, even if it contradicts their personality traits, which herein lies the issues with the personality system for The Sims 4. Traits exist, but do they really? Most of the time, traits in The Sims 4 feel somewhat useless because of the emotion system. Though in theory, adding an emotion sounds really cool, it seems to have become a detriment to how the Sims function in The Sims 4 specifically. Sims emotions almost always override their trait-based reactions or interactions, whether it's with objects or other Sims. The Sims 4 is unique for sure, but is that necessarily a good thing? It depends on who you ask. If there ever is a Sims 5, I hope that the Sims team forget that they ever created the emotion system mess that is The Sims 4. I personally think The Sims 3 did it best, but what are your thoughts? Leave a comment below, and again, don't forget to leave the video a like and to subscribe to see more. Take care, and happy simming!